India is a significant player in the global automotive market and is very rich with numbers. So it's only fair that manufacturers would try to bank and cash in on those numbers. Now, while most manufacturers try to bring in their European or American or wherever they are from their spec into the country along with their models, very few manufacturers venture into uncharted territory and try to build a product from the ground up for a specific market. More often than not, this is rewarded by consumers, but worst case scenario, this could cost the manufacturer a fortune. One such manufacturer trying to carve its name in the Indian subcontinent is Citroën. Now, we had the Citroen C5 earlier, and you wouldn't exactly call that an affordable car, though it did a pretty good job justifying its higher price tag. It was only a matter of time before Citroën entered the smaller segments. And here we have the first example of it, the Citroen C3. Its key rivals are the likes of the Renault Kiger, the Nissan Magnite, the Tata Punch. And if you look at those cars are very young and youthful and energetic looking. And I feel like the C3 really embodies that quite well. I mean, just look at this car. It's stunning. It looks very handsome in my opinion. Now that could be subjective about which one you think looks better, but I think this one looks beautiful as it is. It's time we head out, we see what's what. We have two engine choices with us. I mean, they're the same engine, but one's naturally aspirated and one isn't. So let's go out there, see what's what, and find out just how good or bad the Citroen C3 is. Now, when we were shown the original sketches of the design for this car and the concept, it looked beautiful. But what baffles me is just how much of the concept Citroën has been able to bring into life. I mean, let's take the tiny little things that I personally like that made it from the sketch here. Like the logo seamlessly blending it into the hood. Small thing, but it looks quite handsome. You see the logo and the chrome carrying on forward and eventually just blending into the DRL and the headlamp. I think that looks quite handsome. It's very minimalist and I don't know, it really catches your eye. Move along the side of the car and you'll notice on the front fender that there are these dimples that start from the front bumper and then etch their way into the front fender over here. And the same thing continues on the hood. If you come down to the rear, you notice that the same design carries forth with around the C-pillar over here and does the same thing from the rear bumper to the rear wheel fender. Now, I don't know how or why they've done this, but this car looks really quirky and it could please some people, it could polarize some people. I personally like it. I like the fact that every bumper, every panel has some amount of detail to it and some amount of thought to it. It's a very quirky looking car and I definitely think that a lot of young people would be attracted by it. And to top that off, Citroën gives you a whole bunch of color options and they even allow you to customize different parts individually. So that makes the whole thing a lot more personalized and interesting. And yeah, shit, they've really hit the nail on the hammer when it comes to design. Alright, let's talk about the interior. Now, the interior is very simple. There's a few key highlights that I would like to shine light upon. Like, for example, the steering wheel. It's simple, it's small, it makes it easy to maneuver the car. The TFT screen is quite nice, it's very easy to use, it's smooth and responsive to the touch. Visually speaking, it's very well integrated into the dashboard. Although I'm not too sure about the piano black surround because I feel like it's just calling for dust and smudge marks. You will notice that the trim over here is graphite in color and based on the exterior color choice, you can actually customize and have this changed. For example, if you opt for the zesty orange on the outside, you could have it on the inside too in place of this rather monotone looking grey. The switchgear and controls are easy to use, they're nice and they have a good tactile feel to them. However, I do wish that this interior had a little more to offer than what it does at the moment. Something tells me that in the future there will be more models to go with and that will bring more equipment, and I think maybe Citroën is just testing the waters right now. Or for all I know, the prices are yet to be revealed, so one can't really tell. But as it is, I do feel like it does leave you wanting a bit more, and compared to its competition, it does feel like it lacks a little bit in the equipment front. But let's talk about the seats. The seats are very comfortable. They're fabric and they're wide enough. They're honestly really cozy, and they're cozy enough that you could genuinely sleep in them. And I'm telling you this from experience. A lot of plastics around the cabin, but you can't really expect a lot more at this price point. I mean, I don't even know what price point it is, so I am hoping for the best here. But given its competition and the class that it is, plastic seems to be a thing that's abundantly available in them. That being said, I like that the way the interior has been toned and the choice of colors over here are nice. There's good amount of storage space around you. The bottle holder is big enough to hold a full-size bottle. You don't have things like a sunglass holder or something like that, but the car does make up for it by giving you extra spaces other places. You have a 12-volt charging socket in the front and a USB charging socket, and if that wasn't enough, you have two USB charging sockets in the back too. I feel, again, I'm nitpicking here, but a Type-C charger, a Type-C charging socket would have been nice and would have made life easier, because there seems to be enough USB charging sockets already. Okay, now in the back seat of the C3, it is a comfortable place to be, I'm not gonna lie. The seat recline is decent enough. It's quite supportive and comfortable. There is no armrest, though I think a passenger in the middle would be comfortable. The leg room over here, now the seat ahead is set to my driving position, and I have just about enough leg room if I tuck my feet all the way underneath. Yep, I'm pretty comfortable here. There's decent amount of headroom, no complaints there either. And visibility outside the window is pretty good too. All in all, yeah, the back seat is pretty comfortable to be, and if you're a young person traveling around with your friends or even have your family with you occasionally, it's a nice place to be, and I don't imagine anyone ever having complaints. Maybe they might have tiny little complaints regarding the interior just being a little plain. Given the exterior, the interior I feel like could have been a little more quirky. But again, I'm nitpicking, and this could be subjective. I don't think a lot of people stress so much about the choice of interior, or if the quirkiness matches the outside and the inside. But personally, I feel like they could have been a little more playful with the interior than they have. But as it is, I feel like it's a very comfortable place to be. And objectively speaking, it does the job. It's comfortable, it's nice, I like it. Now, enough about this seat, let's talk about the one in the center, where most of your favorite friends are going to be. So this place is actually quite comfortable too. Yeah, sure, you do feel the lack of a headrest, but it's fine. I don't think you'd complain so much, unless you like complaining. Then there's that. Legroom and shoulder width seem good enough. Citroën did mention that they put emphasis on having wider space over here and having a bigger shoulder room. And I don't know, I will need two other people in here with me, and depending on their width, but visually speaking, yeah, it definitely looks like it could fit 3 people comfortably in the back. So another thumbs up from me. So first, driving impressions of the Citroen C3. This one is powered by the Puretech 82 engine, which produces about 80 bhp or 82 PS and makes about 115 Newton meters of torque. It's a 3-cylinder, it's a 1.2 liter engine, and petrol, 5-speed manual. That's the basics out of the equation. You can look up those specs on the internet too. Let's talk about how this engine feels. Now, one thing I can tell you is that this is probably going to be the more popular choice, and people will probably buy this. Given that it's going to be at the entry-level point. And in that regard, this naturally aspirated engine is easy to drive, it's smooth. However, there are a few things that do bug me every now and then. For example, when it comes to the clutch depression can be a little vague, in the sense that it takes I don't think it's something that is impossible to learn. It just takes a little while. I'm driving this car for the first time, so which is why it took a little while to get used to it. But yeah, initially you can find that a little tricky to understand just where the engagement point of the clutch is. But once you get that out of the way, yeah, it's pretty easy to drive. It's a comfortable car. Visibility is great all around. The cabin isolation is pretty good. Citroën has done a great job with the NVH levels are quite nice. The cabin isolation is pretty good. And Citroën have done a great job to ensure that the outside remains the outside and rarely ever breaks into the cabin. So it's a very comfortable place to be. And these seats do a very wonderful job keeping you comfortable too. I mean, they're very soft. They're not exactly quite bolstered, so don't expect it to hug you around tight turns, but that's fine. That's just, I don't think you would care about it buying a compact car that you and your friends can go on a road trip with. Now, overall visibility is quite decent. You have a great view outside, and the A-pillars don't really intrude, and even from the rear view mirror, it's quite nice. The mirrors are manually adjusted, that's a thing. Whoops, rumble strip. Another thing that is worth noting is the fact that this car does not have a keyless system, so you have to use your key, which to me was a little, it's been a while since I've driven a car where you have to put in the key and manually turn it. I'm not complaining, it's a nice feeling, takes me back, you know, gives you some nostalgia. Another thing worth mentioning is the aircon system. Citroën specifically said that they have engineered the aircon system to deal with India's hot climates, and I'm not gonna lie, it does a pretty fantastic job. However, it can be a little difficult to feel cooler if you're sitting in the back, because the aircon system does a great job cooling the passengers and the occupants in the front, but not the ones in the rear so much. It takes a while, but hey, I mean, you don't have AC vents. This is the best that the front AC vents can do. So like, you know, c'est la vie. Now let's talk about the steering wheel. You see, the steering wheel is nice and small, it's easy to hold, it's easy to maneuver, and it should make driving this car around tight turns quite easy to turn. The steering feel is good. I wouldn't say the steering is vague. In fact, it has decent amount of feedback, so I know exactly, not exactly precisely, but I do know what my front wheels are doing. And I think that amount of feedback is adequate for a car that's going to be primarily driven by a family and in the city. I don't think this is designed to be a mile muncher, though, truth be told, I feel like it is totally capable of doing so, because it's a very comfortable car to be in. And one thing that does bother me about this car is the fact that there is no rev meter. I don't think it's a necessity, but it's a great way to sort of understand where you are in the rev range. This, you only get a gear shift indicator, and yeah, I wish it had a red counter. It's not a deal breaker, but it's still something that did, you know, something noticeable, and something that you, maybe as a purist, if you get this car, will notice. Let's talk about the brakes. Now, the braking feel on this specific model is good. It brakes well. However, I don't like the pedal feel. The pedal feel can be a little too spongy for my taste, and it makes it a little hard to know exactly when the brakes are about to bite. So, yeah, you just pretty much are left with no other choice but to press it as hard as you possibly can in case of one of those hard braking situations, not knowing entirely just when it's going to engage. But when you do hit the brakes, when you do slam on it, it does anchor down and stop pretty quickly. So I don't really have issues with the braking per se, it's just about the pedal feel. Okay, let's talk about the gear knob. Again, changing gears on this car is actually fun. I've quite enjoyed holding on to this gear knob, and even the feel from it is quite nice. So like shifting gears, it's a fun feeling on this car, right? I mean, you'd want to shift gears. Plus, the gear shift movement is quite smooth. So yeah, go for it, go ham. Be like one of those Fast and Furious guys, you know, who has like 50 gear shifts, but you've only gone from like 0 to like 100 or something. Alright, so while I'm waiting at a stoplight, I'm going to tell you about the audio system over here. So they've done a good job, and in fact, Citroën personally designed a playlist for every journalist that answered their questionnaire. I didn't, but they still made one for me, and yeah, it does a good job. I wouldn't exactly say that it is as good as the Tata Punch, but it comes pretty close. And to me, I hold the Tata Punch as the best in its segment in terms of audio quality. So if this is probably just as good, if not second best. So kudos to Citroën for pulling that off. Okay, now coming back to the engine. 80 bhp is good enough for a car this size. But one thing that can make it a little tricky to drive in the city is the fact that you have to depress the clutch a lot, you know, like it has a lot of travel. So that can be quite tricky to drive inside the city when you have to constantly work the clutch a lot more. And I wish that they would have given this car a lighter clutch, given the fact that most of its time is going to be spent inside the city and not primarily on the highway. On the highway, it's great. It doesn't really bother you as much. But in the city, it's something worth noticing, especially for if you're, say, an old person driving the car. You may not like this as much, and unfortunately there is no automatic variant just yet, so that could be a deal breaker for you. At this price point, it does feel you wanting a little bit, And things like ambient lighting, for example, it's not exactly, oh my god, oh, ambient lighting is such a must, how I need ambient lighting. It's nothing like that. But having it would have been nicer, because this cabin as it is funky, and I feel like that would have just added more to the funk and the playfulness of this car. Now, let's talk about ride and handling. The handling of this car is quite nice. I've been driving through some really beautiful twisty roads so far, and I've been taking sharp, hard turns at high speeds, and this car does not phase it. It's so planted, it's very communicative. I have no complaints with it whatsoever. It's a very good car in that sense, and if you ever take it to a twisty road, it won't disappoint you. It's oodles of fun in that sense. It's just the engine that can let you down, but that's only because we're driving the Puretech 82. I'm pretty sure once we move to the Puretech 110, it's going to be a lot better. Now, unlike the Puretech 82, the Puretech 110 is a 6-speed manual gearbox, and it's also turbocharged. So I assume that extra gear is to stretch its feet on the highway. Though if you did go for the Puretech 82 itself and you are going to use it on the highway, it's not going to bug you, it's not going to be a deal breaker per se. We've been driving under varied degrees, you could say. I mean, there have been times where we've been going quite fast, there have been times we've been quite slow, there's carts, there's highways, there's suburban roads. So on an average, I am seeing about a fuel efficiency of 16 kilometers per liter, which is very close to what they're recommending. And one thing I can tell you for sure is that, look, if you're going to ring this 3-cylinder engine, you can imagine that the fuel efficiency figures are going to come down to single-digit numbers. But if you drive it like a sane human being within speed limits, then yes, the claimed 19 kilometer per liter average is quite achievable, and I believe Citroën when they say that. Alright, we're now driving the Puretech 110. Now, the 110 makes about 109 bhp and makes about 190 Newton meters of torque, which is quite healthy for such a small car. And believe me when I say this car goes. It goes with some vigor. I mean, it has all the punch you'd ever need in a vehicle of this size, and no complaints there whatsoever. Now, unlike the previous one, I did say that, okay, you have to ring it a little bit. This one, not so much. This one has power available all throughout. The thing that still bothers me is that there is no tachometer, so it's really hard to gauge when exactly you're in the power band or in the rev range, but it's fine. It's, like I said, negligible, and if you're the person who doesn't care, you probably won't even notice or care. Now, let's talk about the fuel efficiency figures. Now, this is the same engine as the previous one, just that this one is turbocharged and also has an extra gear in there for you. So, if you drive it like a sane person, you can squeeze as much as out of 16 kilometers per liter out of this motor. But if you drive it like a maniac, which believe me, you will sometimes, because this engine is really fun, you can get as much as, I would say, 11, maybe even 8 kilometers per liter out of this. But that is only when you drive it like a maniac. If you drive it with respect, I am sure you could squeeze even more out than 16 kilometers per liter, which is commendable. Everything else is pretty much the same in the car. The suspension, the gearbox, again, you have an extra gear, but it feels the same. It's just as fun to shift this gearbox. And the clutch and the braking feel is, again, the same. So I hope you haven't missed that part of the video. If you have, then please backtrack and watch it. But yeah, rest it is as it is. I must say that this orange finish on the inside looks a little more appealing in my opinion. It adds a little more taste and flavor to this interior. Now, I mentioned with the Naturally-aspirated that it seems more comfortable to do city duty, but not to say that this wouldn't. This would be more than happy doing city duty. In fact, this would be more than happy even doing highway commutes, because it cruises really smooth and slotted into 6th gear, and you can just have a nice smooth little drive. However, I must mention that if you are driving on the highway and if you do happen to ring it, be prepared to have the engine be a little more audible than it is, because I mean, come on, it's just a 1.2 3-cylinder, so there's only so much it can take. If you stress the engine out, you're going to hear it. So mentally prepare yourself for that. But it's nothing too annoying. Although I must mention, it's not a very pleasant sounding engine. Yeah, but drive it like a sane person and you'll never hear it complain. Out of the two motors, it's gonna sound cliched, but the turbocharged one is my favorite. It produces more power, feels healthier to drive, is more fun, and just seems like in the long run, it would be an engine that would put a smile on your face consistently throughout. And you'd get bored of it. I mean, I don't know, it would take you a long time to get bored of this engine because it's so much fun. I mean, just... it's got so much grunt, I love it. I mean, this engine has so much grunt. Here, get a look at this. 5th gear, floor the throttle, just gets going like it's nothing. No stress at all. And I like that. I like that about this engine. And I feel like if I had to go touring and I had to go longer distances and cover varying degrees of terrain and hard section roads and uphill climbs, this engine would be a lot more happier and comfortable doing those things. So yes, this would be my pick. Well, we're back where we started, exactly where we are. Same car, different engine. By the end of it, I gotta tell you, I really like the C3. Sure, it may not be the best car out there, but I'm willing to bet that it's the most fun car in its segment. And its price is what will really put things into perspective and will justify a lot of things or make a lot of things look overpriced. And it's totally down to what Citroën prices it. And knowing Citroën, maybe this time around, they will be quite aggressive with their pricing. So my guess is that it could be priced somewhere under the Kiger and the Magnite, but somewhere a little over the Punch. That's where my guess is. Well, what do you know? What if they surprise me and undercut all of them, for all you know? So if you like the Citroen C3's quirky looks and you like what you saw on our channel, do stick around to it. This is Gavin Rodriguez signing off.